Hello. Welcome back to Liticast. Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. If you've come to us via LinkedIn, via our own website, via YouTube, however you got here, thank you for coming and attending today. Very excited about our guest today. We have a killer show lined up here. Some very interesting topics we're going to go through. But first, let me give a little bit of background and introduction. So, from Thompson and Flanagan, a pair of professionals who I've gotten to know over the last couple of years and are very knowledgeable in their space. But first off, Kim Noble is a senior VP at Thompson Flanagan, which is based out of Chicago. Kim is a lawyer. She's been managing for 20 years and working with firms and insurance companies and accountants and real estate interests, really advising on the best way to handle insurance concerns and legal matters as it relates to insurance. Kim is the smart one on the call today. Let's just be very clear about that, because Danny and I are not. And
true story.
True story. We can be charming, but if we really want some good advice, we're going to talk to Kim. And Danny Hughes is a partner at Thompson Flanagan's. Been there pretty much since the beginning. Has an interesting background in sales and selling sports in Chicago, for example. And Danny, I didn't know this about you, but I guess so your uncle was the original person to dye the Chicago River green. That's a very interesting fact.
It is, and insurance is boring, so you gotta spark it up with a little, fun news every once in a while. My uncle Barry McGrath was a salesman and created a drink called Green River, and was very close with the first Mayor Daley, and used to dump green dye into the river before the EPA cared, and now they use dust and everything. But it was back before they cared how healthy the river was in the 50s and 60s.
Which is not at all.
Yeah, which is not at all. Yeah.
Well, in any event, Danny, Kim, welcome. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Really Thanks for having us.
Very welcome. So you can find these guys at their website, thompsonflanagan.com. We'll post all this stuff and on LinkedIn as well. But I'm actually very, very proud of this partnership that we created early on in Litify's development. And I think one of the terms we used, Danny, back then was sort of belt and suspenders, so to speak, meaning, utilizing technology to put firms in a better place so they can protect themselves and their employees and the firm. But also you need insurance. You need to understand what's going on. You need to protect. So, we've done several things throughout the years on that theme, which is really how do you best prepare your firm? How do you best cover your firm from all angles, from tech, from insurance, from personnel, from inside, outside, that type of thing. So I'm excited to talk more about that today. So again, thank you guys for joining. Appreciate it. Jumping right in. So it's obviously the landscape has changed. Two things I always try to not hammer home, but we always come around to on these Liticasts is, our current environment. People kind of get sick of hearing about COVID, but it's a reality. And we have to adjust, obviously. And then the other one is, blatant plugs for our products, but we'll get to both of those, I'm sure, at some point. But Kim, I'll start with you. Just sort of what does the landscape look like right now? How have things changed? Are you seeing more claims? Are you seeing things up, down? Like what's the latest?
Sure. So as you mentioned, things pretty much change on a daily basis, even in insurance, which traditionally moves at a snail's pace. So we continue to watch and see what's happening in the claims environment and see if there are, more claims coming out, if claims are more expensive, what we're going to see. There's I forget who says it, but those who do not study history are doomed to repeat it. It very much applies to insurance. We look at things like the 2008, 2009 economic downturn and know that when the economy starts being more challenging, we see more claims against lawyers. So what we're expecting, more claims, and they're probably going to be more expensive to either resolve or defend. Have we seen a lot of that yet? Not quite yet. I think, we're still trying to figure out how to work our technology at home. Things will move slowly, but we will start to see claims being made against lawyers, particularly as deals maybe go south because of the economy, or because of all the changing rules and guidelines that we're sort of having to keep track of on a daily basis. Are the courts open? Are the courts closed? What are the deadlines for filing things? All of those things are going to play into what we see in the claims environment.
Danny, any other color on that?
No, just to give a little background, we represent 600 plus law firms in 40 states, from AM Law, the biggest in the country, on down to very specialized firms within the AAJ space. So we do get a sampling, and we understand where everything's are. Everything is moment by moment. I agree with Kim. Why it rolls slow is claims development doesn't happen for a while. People are still dealing with the 07, 08, 09 aftermath, and payments are just being made for that. So the reserves from those years are starting to affect these carriers even now. So it may be 7 or 8 years before we see the COVID-related claims and what comes from them. So we don't know currently, what is the cause of them or what may happen from them. But we do know that during economic depression, massive claims come out of it because law firms get sued.
Right. Yeah, and in our world, a lot of the conversations with our clients has been more around just preparation for volume and preparation for, I guess, a bit of the unknown, frankly. And firms are looking or using this time period, maybe when they're not so busy in the grind day to day, to work on their business versus in their business and prepare for things like this. So I imagine you guys are seeing more of the same, where conversations, trying to get understanding and trying to get ahead of it as best they can.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. And I think we see that very jurisdiction by jurisdiction. We represent a lot of law firms in California, and California seems to be in the most disarray. I guess not surprisingly, California is always its kind of own special place in the legal malpractice world. But yeah, I mean, we're waiting to see, are the courts open? And there are a lot of lawyers who are sitting around, trying to figure out what the next case is going to be, and working on sort of the nuts and bolts of the practice when they can't be in court and they're not in deposition and they're not answering interrogatories.
I was going to ask that. So what does it look like now? What does the regulatory framework look like? Courts are closed. How is that affecting claims? Like, what's going on right now because of the differences we need to deal with?
I mean, you've got a wide array of things going on. You've got states where courts are completely closed. I have lawyer friends who, have trials that were supposed to happen next month that have been pushed to late 2021.
Wow.
So, there's a lot of sitting around and doing nothing. But that can change on a dime. If the courts open up and things start moving again, there are going to be deadlines to meet. There are going to be things to do. So I think it's incumbent on practitioners to kind of keep their eye out and keep in front of things so they're ready to go when that lever is pushed.
I'm going to rewind the tape a little bit because I can't let an opportunity for a snarky joke go by. You mentioned before that California is a different animal as it relates to some of this stuff. California is a different animal, stop sentence. And I can say that because I have a bunch of family in California. So
absolutely. No offense to the California attorneys on the phone.
They embrace it. So let me pull the lens back a little bit and just sort of maybe pull the audience into some commonalities. So and Danny, maybe you can answer this best. What are the most common causes for malpractice? What are you advising most of your clients on? What are you seeing?
What I see on after doing this for 15 years, still number one thing is administrative failure to file, statute of limitations. Which is sad because, the managing partner usually is the last one to find out. And I usually get these phone calls that say, I've never had a problem and we've blown the statute, which really takes away from, a case may be worth $250,000, but then it's all of a sudden worth $2 or $3 million because your full limits are there. Or what the potential limits could be. And there's no recourse because you can't get that thing back on the docket because it's been, knocked off. That's the number one thing I see is just pure failure to file correctly, whether it's in jurisdictions, whether it's federal, whether it's state. Another thing I do see is failure to name a defendant. And that's one that I've seen a couple of times, which can cause a huge gap out there. Not that often, but if you fail to notify a defendant, obviously, and you sue two people and not the third, and a plaintiff attorney finds out about it, you're going to get sued for that. So.
Yeah, Danny's absolutely right. That's the case. But we are also seeing a lot more what I would call attorney judgment type claims, where it's just, second guessing what the attorney did. If you didn't get as much money as you thought you were going to get, then you go back to your attorney and say, well, you should have called that expert witness, or he should have a different argument in closing, or we should have settled before we went to trial. I would have gotten more money. So those kinds of claims would have gone away very, very quickly, just like 10 years ago, because it was within the attorney's discretion to what they were going to call and what they were going to say in their closing. And now all of a sudden, those are turning into legal malpractice claims.
Mm-hmm. Shameless plug for Litify Alert. Let me just throw that out there. But and the first thing you mentioned, Dan, was sort of the SOL component and not being notified around it. That's one of the first things that our clients brought to us when we were rolling out our initial product. They were like, you have to notify us and make it systematic. And even if you're sending a text to the attorney, an email, something within the Litify system itself, like that is the biggest worry that they have, that these dates are going to arbitrarily go by and they're not going to be addressed. So that actually evolved into really a lot of the task management that we put out there, that if this, then that, if that, then this, and it really keeps everybody on the same page. And then what's interesting, you just gave me an idea around the defendant not being named or not being sued properly. One of the other things and this is not necessarily a Litify thing, but a process thing where we really try to encourage clients, what do your best resources do every time? And let's understand what that actual workflow looks like. And then we embed that into Litify. But it's that sense of, are you doing it the best way, getting the best customer experience out there every single time? And that mentality is obviously more important now than any time in history, I would imagine. So.
Yeah, I'll underscore the importance of those notifications that your system provides, because that is key. It is absolutely amazing to me how many claims I've seen throughout my career where the attorney missed the statute of limitations by a day. I don't know what the phenomenon is where I think maybe you wake up in a cold sweat in the middle of the night and we're like, oh my gosh, I should have filed this. And then, it's one day late. So, all of that in advance warning is, I think, very helpful to attorneys in knowing when your deadlines are coming up and not being surprised by them.
Yeah, we had one firm ask us if the system could splash water in someone's face. I said, not yet. We're working on that, but not yet. Yeah,
that would be a great feature.
To plug Litify a little bit.
Go ahead.
Yeah, just to give you a sense of when you fill out an application for what we broker, which is professional liability insurance, which a firm buys once a year, you have to fill out an application that asks you, what is your docketing? What is your calendaring? What is your conflict of interest? And I would highly recommend for all the people listening right now to literally name Litify on their application. And I say that because we have done some underwriting meetings within the Litify world in Brooklyn. And one of the reasons we did underwriting meetings at Litify was to show the underwriting world how far ahead Litify is in its dashboard and everything that it does. Because it's filling a need that I think as insurance companies and law firms, we are two of the last people in the world to come forward with technology or whatever. And Litify is kind of leaping people forward. And we were so impressed by it that we wanted the insurance companies to see it. So I would say 80% of the world in the underwriting, lawyer, professional liability world has either experienced it in person in Brooklyn or on a Zoom call when we were doing Zoom calls. So if you name Litify in your application, there's a good chance that those people will recognize that name and understand that that firm is being protected by something they are understanding of. And it also, it doesn't necessarily give them credit. There's no like, hey, you get 12% off, or, there's nothing like that. But it also solidifies that the firm is serious about their technology, because all of those underwriters have experienced Litify and know it's kind of the game changer and the next step for most of these law firms. But I would say that, unequivocally.
It definitely puts you steps beyond we still have attorneys filling out applications who, when you ask them if they have an electronic case management system, they answer Outlook.
Sometimes Outlook. Sometimes we have a bell at our front desk.
So that it definitely is a game changer in terms of managing a caseload, particularly if you're a high volume practice.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So that's my plug.
And thank you both very, very much. And I always say this, that, not rehearsed. I did not ask for that, but it's 100% true. And, one of the things that we really try to bring to the forefront is, these types of protections are being addressed and you alluded to this, Dan, in other industries. Like, this is we're not talking about really incredibly, forward-thinking technology. It's almost like playing catch up a little bit. And most firms I sit with, they recognize that, and they understand that they need to think more like a modern business. And things like calendar rules and some of the task management automation that we put in place, a lot of it really comes down to just, it kind of focuses on two things, maybe three things, but customer experience. So you're doing the best job for your client every single time. Secondly is protecting your firm, which, you guys obviously play very well into that scheme. And then the third is efficiencies, where you want to do it in a way that you're not duplicating efforts and things like that. So thank you for that. That's 100% accurate. And I think that's a lot of the business that we get. It's firms really taking a good hard look at what they have in place right now, recognizing there's gaps. And yes, we're an investment, and yes, we're not the cheapest provider out there, but we really try to put ourselves in the shoes of our clients and figure that out. And by extension, it's partnerships like this that make a lot of sense, because we could say, okay, great. Now, we have all this in place. What are you doing now for insurance coverage? Do you have the best? Do you have everything covered? And it's folks like yourself that come in and kind of really wrap that into a nice bow. So appreciate that.
Yep.
Cool. One question is there, we touched on this a little bit, but I'm curious, are there, maybe even outside of COVID, or maybe it is COVID, but are there sort of new risks out there that lawyers should know about, that they're maybe not thinking about? Is there anything sort of bubbling up that you're seeing?
I think there are two things, and we alluded to one of them earlier in the conversation, which is sort of keeping track of the changing rules and the changing deadlines, because of the nature of the COVID shift to work from home, and just the statute of limitations being sort of paused and deadlines being paused, and keeping on top of that. But beyond that, I think the biggest risk we may see out of COVID is cyber type exposures with everyone working at home, and the importance of protecting your client's data and making sure that your systems are secure, and that all of that extension of your technology is not creating a risk for yourself. So, those are two areas that we're kind of watching. The other thing that I think that we may see a little bit of is there are certain areas of practice that for at least a period of time kind of dried up, foreclosure type work, that, commercial litigation type work. Those attorneys really didn't have a lot to do. And we saw some of them, trying to jump into areas like employment law, because lots of people were asking employment law questions. And so, really, we call it dabbling in the industry, but, really looking at attorneys who, look, you got to pay the mortgage, so you got to find something to do to produce revenue. But really getting into areas of practice where they don't have any expertise.
Yeah, a couple of things to say in regards to what Kim was talking about, cyber, and law firms, like insurance companies, are last to everything, which shocks me sometimes, because lawyers are at the forefront of creating the law, and they're at the tip of the spear. There are still law firms that don't carry employment practices insurance. We broker employee benefits, property casualty, but the ancillary lines, which are EPL, employment practices liability, cyber liability, which is cyber E&O, and crime fiduciary, which protects your 401. All of those, we think the ancillaries actually are the most used policies in our book of business. Employment practices out of COVID, we think we're getting kind of bracing for. People getting sued in labor, cyber, criminals. They haven't figured out a way to stop them yet. And the crime policy, one thing I highly recommend to everybody listening to this right now, the crime policy works in conjunction with the cyber. We are seeing people come in and steal settlements and mirroring settlements in the email chain. And people think they're talking to the other attorney. They think they're talking to an arbitrator. They think they're talking to a bank. All of a sudden, they're talking to some dude in Ukraine that's $3 million richer, and everyone else is wondering where the bag is. So the crime policy is very important. The cyber policy and the EPL, and they're all pennies on the dollar, in my opinion, compared to the lawyer professional liability that get used very often by law firms. And that's where a huge exposure is right now. So if you don't carry a cyber E&O, where 99% of our lives are plugged into the wall, that you're not carrying the most important insurance there is, in my opinion. And the crime and fiduciary, where we're going to see a lot of people stealing out of this thing too. So that's on top of the lawyer professional liability. The ancillaries, if you don't carry those, they're cheap. They're inexpensive for $1 million, $2 million worth of coverage, and it gives you a sleep at night. Most EPL coverage is just cost of defense. 99% of those deals go away, but having $1 million or $2 million to defend these nuisance matters is actually really good to have. Right, Kim? Kim would.
That's absolutely right.
Yeah.
What it's funny you meant, and not even in that equation. You said pennies on the dollars, reputational damage, because you're
exactly right.
You're kind of up the river if it gets out that these things have happened, and we've seen incidents of it pretty consistently. And even with big firms who you would think they have their stuff wired tight, it happens. It definitely happens. And frankly,
DLA Piper got shut down for 7 or 8 business days. I mean, that's cray.
Yeah,
that was crazy.
Hell in the Night recently, I think some emails got hacked, and then a similar situation. I mean, these are big firms, which I would imagine have a pretty substantial spend on security and IT and tech and protection around there. And by the way, I would caveat that with, the best systems in the world, may not prevent everything. So, you guys are the last line of defense in that capacity. So, as much as I'd like to sit here and say that, Litify / Salesforce is what we're built on, can alleviate that, I'd be lying. I can't say that with 100% certainty.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely true. I had the pleasure of listening to an actual hacker give a presentation at a conference I was at back when we could actually get on planes and fly to conferences. And you do everything that you can think of to protect your system, and a hacker can still get in. The hacker was able to hack into somebody's iPhone sitting in the audience within, minutes of being on stage. It was absolutely amazing. So, my takeaway from that was the criminals are smarter than we are. So, you might as well buy the insurance because it will eventually happen at some time in your career.
Sure. I'm going to take a question that we have a question that came in on the comments section. And just a reminder to anybody listening, if you have a question or a comment or you want to make a comment about my halo I'm wearing, this light on my head, please go right ahead. But this comes from Jeremy. Jeremy is asking that, understanding that legal malpractice insurance policies renew annually, how can a law firm benefit by submitting a renewal application early to a Thompson Flanagan?
Well, one of the things we do with people when we get a lot of referrals, we get people who call us when stuff hits the fan, and we're able to come in and really, we go to 30 domestic markets and 15 Lloyd's of London syndicates. We have these deep relationships and hundreds of millions of dollars of premium placed there. So we can kind of really help people that are having issues. That's my favorite phone call to get, even though it's their worst phone call. But also, people have great deals in place, and I look at those all the time. And one of the things we do, honestly, is we assess people's programs way ahead of their renewal And if you have a great deal, I'll tell you I have a great deal. If you have enough coverage, and I don't want to be like, oh, we deal with a lot of bad stuff, just like lawyers do. So everything's not terrible. Actually, this area of practice and a lot of what Litify represents is a really wonderful area of practice. And that's why I advocate for it and why we advocate for over 260 plaintiff firms in the country. The data tells us they are a really good risk. But here's what we are seeing. And there's an ABA study every 4 years on malpractice. We are seeing a severity of risk. We're seeing frequency go down a little bit, but we are seeing severity go up. So in 2011, the ABA interviews 8 insurance carriers. In 2011, there were 0 claims for $5 million or more. There were 0 claims. Every 4 years they do a study. The last one we saw was 2015. There were 28 $5 million claims. Okay, so there were 0 to 28. In 2011, there were 49 million to $5 million claims. And then in 2015, there were 510. And in 2011, there were 243 $500,000 claims. And in 2015, there were 1,000 $500,000 claims. My point being, if you're still carrying a $5 million policy and you were carrying that 15 years ago or 10 years ago, that $5 million is not the same amount of money. The cost of defense, So I always tell people, if you can afford to cover yourself a little more, excess is a very cheap product or inexpensive product. Cover yourself, because we're seeing the severity actually grow with these claims.
Yeah, and I would just sort of circle back to the question and the importance of getting your application in early. Having spent a number of years on the underwriting side of things, the insurance application, believe it or not, I know everybody thinks it's a huge pain to fill out and it's a big time suck, but it is your opportunity to tell your story about your firm to the insurance company. Mm-hmm. And there are some brokers out there who will just take the piece of paper you give them and send it out to every insurance company they can think of and never take a look at the application. But the thing that we could do is look at your application and help you tell the story. And that gets you better coverage, better rates, more opportunities, more options to look at when you're looking at the different places where you can get your malpractice policy. So, getting your insurance application in 2 days before your policy expires and just renewing with the same company probably is not always the best thing to do. You want to take the opportunity to put your story together and be able to tell people why you're a better than average firm. There, I dove into the shameless plug arena with that answer, but it is a differentiator when you have somebody who can help you understand why you're answering the questions you're answering and what answers the insurance company is looking for.
So to summarize Kim's perspective, you could do your taxes the last day, but you're doing your application, do that proactively and get ahead of that one, so you have the ability to be thoughtful around it. But
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, fair point. Danny, going back to what you were saying though, in terms of the rising value of or rising amounts of these claims, it's I would imagine it's clearly just the rising cost of defense, like you said, inflation, things like that. But is there anything else that's driving those numbers up? It seems like a very, very sharp increase.
It is. I don't know what it is. I think the mistakes that are happening, I see it on both sides. I'm seeing large ones in defense for the first time. And I say this for the first time because I've only been in it for 15 years. But I guess historically, insurance defense firms never were sued. So you'd have 400 files on you from Allstate. You messed up a file, they wink, wink, nod, nod. You go to lunch with the guy and you continue on, right? Well, I guess that changed during the economic downturn. Insurance companies stopped and started really looking at their counsel. And if there were mistakes made, they sue their counsel. And it was an unassumed thing prior to that, I guess, before I was in the business. That is no longer a thing. So insurance defense is now getting sued by their counsel. And that is I think one of the many reasons. There's a lot of fraud that's gone on. A lot of bad things. If you see that, I mean, if you get Law 360 every day or read anything, they all seem like very large claims now. There's bad actors out there that might not have been there before, and law firms are being held to account for those bad actors in business and everything like that. Wouldn't you agree, Kim?
Yeah, deals are getting bigger, and it's also getting more expensive to defend a claim.
E-discovery, yeah.
Discovery has put a whole new spin on things. It's really expensive to go through everyone's email and everyone's text messages and do all of that discovery. So you're seeing it from both ends. Bigger deals mean bigger payments if they get messed up, and also just paying someone to defend a claim is more expensive.
Got it. Oops, sorry. That's our general counsel calling me. Maybe it's maybe I don't know.
We're talking about claims.
Heard claim. A question that was posed to me, or someone asked me to ask you guys, is really around sort of overconfidence, in the sense that how do you prevent when a lawyer is, advises a client to reject a claim or reject a settlement offer that may actually be adequate, it may actually be enough, or maybe historically it's enough, but is there a way that you guys advise your clients to avoid that, or how does that actually work? Is that something you guys address or try to?
I mean, the most important thing in that situation is to make sure that you're documenting the conversations. At the end of the day, every lawyer knows that the settlement decision is the client's. And when you get to the point where you're getting ready to pull that trigger, clients forget that they said yes. Clients forget that they agreed to the attorney's strategy when the malpractice claim comes in. So you need to be sure to document. I have a great example. It was a defense attorney, but he was representing a client, and there was a settlement offer in. They settled. The client had second thoughts, said that he didn't give consent, and there was no documentation. Unfortunately for the guy, or fortunately, he was a meticulous biller, and he had never put in his billing records any kind of discussion or conversation about settlement. And that actually came into play in the legal malpractice case, because the plaintiff's attorney was able to say, you documented every conversation you ever had with this client except for that one. And so you cannot underscore the importance of using a system and a methodology of documenting all the conversations that you have. That's another, I think, huge source of malpractice claims that we get, is just lawyers don't call clients back, and they get frustrated, and then they don't want to pay, and then they end up suing their lawyer for malpractice so they don't have to pay. And so keeping in contact and having regular conversations with your clients are important too. Right.
I'm just thinking, as I'm talking to you both, we got to have a glass of wine. You must have stories that are so.
The hardest thing for me to do is stop reading a lawsuit. Lawyer, I'll get 5 pages into something and I'm like, holy cow. And, it's at the end of the day, that's what lawyers do too. They read lawsuits all day. There's fun stuff.
Lawyer tricks I can share with you.
Yeah. I mean, I'm just thinking of, everything from just silliness to human error to tragedy to just, it's like a Shakespearean novel. I'm sure some of the stuff you guys come across, but
I think some of my insurance carriers may be on this thing today, so they may, cover your ears, earmuffs. But at the end of the day, if someone makes a mistake, they're very sorry. And it's about telling a story. And those are the calls we get out of the blue from random people, not clients, or we get calls out of the blue from clients where they really need our advocacy. As a true third-party broker, we are not beholden to any carrier. And I do want to say that, like, as much as we laugh and kid, we are advocates and storytellers. And if something happens wrong, you need somebody. It's easy to get a broker who happens to do employee benefits or P&C to broker this line of insurance. They do it almost as an aside. the reason we're good at what we do is because this is all we do all day. And we know who to call and how to tell a firm's story. And if it's a one-off situation, that the first time and only time the firm had a situation, but it was a $5 million situation, you almost think you're uninsurable. A lot of people get very scared, but you need somebody with those deep relationships, and you got to be able to tell the firm's story and find out what went wrong and why it won't happen again. That's the most important part I can tell anybody listening right now on the application. When you have a claim, all that, if you put on there, which a lot of people do, we did nothing wrong, but an insurance company paid $5 million on your behalf, make up an excuse of what you did wrong. Because you saying you did nothing wrong does not look good to an underwriter who's saying they pretty much just used us as an ATO. Just FYI, have a little humbleness if you lose $5 million of someone else's money.
Yeah. Yeah, I think
that's a recommendation.
That's the PSA for today, right?
Yep. That's my one tip.
It's funny, and I'll plug you guys in the sense that everybody I've dealt with from your firm has been very experienced and very knowledgeable. And I can think of very few other circumstances where you want somebody who has that wealth of experience and maturity, frankly, and sort of like, seen it, done it type of thing. And I think what you're saying, Danny, which is so true and probably in life, is authenticity matters. And, people make mistakes and people screw up. And, I'd like to sit here and say that. And it's one of those things, even teaching my kids, my older girls are coming out of college now. And I'm like, they make a mistake at work. I'm like, fess up, man, own it. And just, that's going to be way better than, the cover up is worse than the crime, so to speak. And I'm sure you guys face that all the time, which is crazy.
It's actually a huge issue.
Yeah. Kim, going back to something you said in passing, I just wanted to drill into that. How are the firms you're working with, how are they keeping that level of communication with their clients to try to avoid, that type of thing? Is there, certainly from a technology perspective, we could talk about that, but are you advising them in that sense as well to keep that? And on other Liticasts, we've had this topic come up, and universally it's always client attorney communication that becomes some type of issue in whatever context, if it's customer satisfaction, if it's whatever, but like, what are you seeing there?
Yeah, no, every client that an attorney has, or almost every client that an attorney has, thinks that they're the most important client that an attorney has. And so, if you look at the disciplinary records of disciplinary complaints in any state, the most common issue is the lawyer didn't return my phone call. Look, I practiced law for a long time, and I know I had files on my desk and clients I didn't want to talk to. And this was even before caller ID was around, so you couldn't even screen your calls when the client called in. You either didn't answer your phone or you were at the mercy. But it certainly is an issue. Keeping your client informed, letting them know what's going on. I think, TV has done a lot of professions disservice, but TV and the movies makes it seem like legal cases move very quickly. And reality is they don't. And I think COVID's going to make that even worse. Things are going to move at the speed of a molasses at this point in time. And so just keeping your clients updated on, hey, this is what's happening, or simply nothing's happening. But having a system like Litify that can remind you to make those kind of calls and kind of give you a tickler and say, hey, I'm just checking in, letting you know nothing's going on, or, this is what we're looking forward to in 30, 60, 90 days. It really staves off a lot of problems. Happy clients don't normally sue their lawyers. It's the unhappy ones who do.
Right. Excellent. So we are kind of nearing the end here. I will obviously give you guys an opportunity. Any parting thoughts, Danny? Anything to tell our audience?
No, I hope everyone's doing well in this kind of crazy time. I hope everyone's business is okay and everyone's employees and wherever you are in the country. I miss not getting out there. I travel, 60, 70 times a year on behalf of law firms, and I love what I do. If you'd like us to take a review of your insurance programs, it's all confidential. It takes 5 minutes of your administrator's time, and we can do a peer review, since we have so much data of 600 plus law firms, and get back to you with a one sheet that says you're sufficiently covered, you're paying perfectly fine, stay where you are, you're in a good place, or, this is not really good. And that happens every once in a while too. So we'd love to help you. Kim and my emails are on thompsonflanagan.com, and we'd love to help you if you want some free advice.
Kim, anything else?
Absolutely. No, I just reiterate what Danny said. We are a very client-focused organization, and we love to help people out. There's just nothing better than getting something done for somebody, and the more challenging, the better. So, certainly if you've had situations in the past where you think that it causes you to have some hurdles in getting your insurance placed, we're here to help.
Excellent. I will. I'll close with a couple things. One, and I forget the guy's name. Was it Cy Sterling or whatever? He's like, I'm not just I'm also a client. I'm not just a hair club for men, right? Was that what it was? So Litify is not just a partner. We are a client of Thompson Flanagan. I'm very proud of that fact. And our experience was really actually Brian Kempner, who called Danny. That's who you dealt with, and we're pretty damn thorough with people we work with, and you guys did a phenomenal job with us. I really appreciate that. I also wanted to thank you both for coming on today. This is a topic we've been talking about for a while, but we haven't had experts on. We've been talking around it, I should say, for a number of Liticasts, but we never really directly hit it on the head. And you guys did a phenomenal job of doing that today. So I really appreciate your time, and thank you so much for coming on. And Danny, I couldn't agree more. I can't wait to get the heck back on the road, man, and talk to people and build those relationships and have a beer here and there, God forbid. So I could not agree more. So to our audience, please, continue to follow us and find us on LinkedIn, on YouTube, on Instagram, on our own website. We have a very exciting lineup next week of more Liticasts coming up, and we're going to start a series now of pulling our clients onto some of these Liticasts to talk directly about what they're building, what they're doing, what they're seeing, how their practice is evolving. We're going to be putting a series of actually some of our early adopter clients, which is great to see, because those are the ones that are really embracing the philosophy of how do you be progressive? How do you continue to do more for your clients? How do you continue to empower your staff? Very exciting stuff coming up. So stay tuned for that. And one last thank you to Danny and Kim. Thank you guys. Really appreciate you coming on today.
Thanks, Terry. Thanks for having us.
Absolutely. All right. Take care, everybody. See you next time.